In this episode, we're talking about how to be charismatic. Get excited because this is Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Leaps, Big Changes, where I share simple strategies you can use to get more out of your life. My name is Greg Clunis, and in this episode, I want to talk about charisma. More specifically, I want to talk about how you can gain charisma, how you can become charismatic, because we all know these people, right? We all know the people that just have the ability to attract attention, keep people entertained, make everyone around them happy, have a good time. We all know these people, and many of us, maybe we don't want that spotlight, but we do want to be able to better connect with people, to feel like they trust us and we can trust them. And a lot of this comes down to charisma. So we know the Oprahs, we know the Obamas, we know the Ellens, we know the Rocks, we know those people, and they are who they are largely because of their level of charisma. Yes, they're talented, and yes, they work hard. They would not be where they are without it. However, the key differentiator between them and the next person who works hard is that they are well liked. People feel safe around them. People can connect with them. People feel like they legitimately care. And that is the power of charisma. And so charisma has often been viewed as something that you either have or you don't have. And in today's episode, I want to show you that it's actually possible to develop charisma, to learn the skills and the approach of living and being that allows you to be viewed as charismatic. But before I do that, I want to remind you, wherever you are consuming this, if it's on the new YouTube channel or if it's just on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, wherever you are consuming this, be sure to click subscribe. That is the best way to make sure you never miss a new episode. So, charisma. How do you gain it? Well, first, let's talk about what charisma actually is. And there's an article by Psychology Today that I think is really good. There's a quote here, and I'm going to link to the article in the description for this, but there's a quote from it. Quote, charisma is the ability to attract, charm, and influence the people around you. There are, of course, different types of charismatic people. Some are graceful, like Jackie Kennedy. Others are exuberant with passion, like Oprah. Charisma is often said to be a mysterious, ineffable quality. You either have it or you don't have it. But it's actually easy to break down many of the key factors that make a person charismatic. And this is 100% true. It's been proven over and over again. One specific place I recommend looking if you want to learn more of the skills behind charisma, more of like the things you can learn and be trained on behind charisma, is a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command. Really, really great channel. They break down people like Will Smith, Obama, Donald Trump, Ellen, pretty much anyone you can think of who has charisma, who can get people in, by this definition, the ability to attract, charm, and influence the people around you. The people who can do that, they take their speeches, their movies, the things that they've done publicly, and they break down what are they doing in this moment to be charismatic. So highly recommend you check them out. Great place to learn the skill of charisma. But what I want to talk about today is how to become more charismatic, and more specifically, how I became more charismatic, because this is a definition that it took a long time for me to be able to identify with. Growing up, I was not charismatic. And I've told this story before. I was shy. I could barely speak up. I felt embarrassed about everything. I felt like nobody liked me. I felt just constantly upset and constantly disconnected and constantly incapable of sort of connecting in the way that I wanted to with the people around me. And I remember being at this party with my dad, and he was pointing to a cousin or a family member of some kind and said, that guy's really charismatic. And I asked him, is it possible to become charismatic? And he told me yes. He told me that you can develop this. And so from that moment, I was, let's say 13, I decided to embrace that idea. And I decided to do everything I could to become more charismatic. And one of the key things that I did, one of the key things that got me to where I am now, where I can present to a room of hundreds of people, where I can speak on stages all across the country, where I can host this podcast and reach thousands of people around the world. The one big thing that really helped me to do that was putting myself out there. And for me, that came in the form of musical theater. That came in the form of choir. That came in the form of auditioning for select choir and making it into select choir. That came in the form of auditioning for all county choir and making it into all county choir. That came in the form of auditioning for all state choir and not making that one, but whatever. That's fine. Their loss. The putting myself out there was something that hurt. It sucked. I did not want to do it. I had that like feeling in your stomach, not just butterflies, like somebody was taking a knife and stabbing me repeatedly every time I got up on stage. I just had that fear, that adrenaline rush, that fear, that panic, that nervousness. I was going to screw up. I was going to get laughed at. I was going to get made fun of, doubting myself constantly. Every single time I put myself out there, but I did it anyway, because in my mind, that was the path. I knew that my weakness was being able to be myself and be comfortable in those situations. And so if I just exposed myself to it and put myself out there, maybe I could learn to manage that. Maybe I could get better at it. And it worked, because to this day, I still get terrified. I still get nervous. I still get that stabby feeling in my stomach. But I now know how to embrace that feeling. I now know how to feel it and do it anyway. I now know how to take that feeling and channel it into the emotion required to be charismatic. So that's my first piece of advice to you, is put yourself out there. It doesn't have to be performing. That was just my thing. It can be whatever makes sense for you. It can be going to the party you don't want to go to. It can be meeting up with the friends that you maybe like feel nervous about seeing. It can be going on that date that you're like, I'm scared of, right? It can be whatever it is for you, but put yourself out there. That's going to help you manage that internal pressure and anxiety and panic that comes with trying to be charismatic when you are inherently not. So that's the first big step, is put yourself out there. The second step is to think about the other person. So a big part of charisma, if we go back to that definition, so to attract, charm, and influence, a big part of influencing, a big part of charming, and a big part of attracting is to have the other person's best interest in mind at all times, to be thinking about them and their perspective and what you can do to bring value to them. Because ultimately, people care about themselves. Like, yes, we care about the world around us. We care about other people. We care about our friends and our family and our loved ones. But the person you think about most in this entire world is yourself. And there's a reason for that, because you ultimately care about yourself. And so if you can present to the other person in a conversation or a relationship that you also care about them deeply, that you want to help them, that you want to do whatever you can for them, that's going to make it a whole lot easier to attract them to you. That's going to make it a whole lot easier to charm them. And it's going to make it a whole lot easier to influence them. And that, my friends, is charisma. Now, the third step, as you are thinking about the other person, sort of like a 2A, honestly, is to care about the other person. You cannot fake this. I get a lot of people saying, hey, Greg, I took your advice. Like, I was asking questions and paying attention. That's not what it's about. It's not like the act of caring. It's the deep down desire to care about them. It's the feeling of caring about them. Like, you have to actually care. And if you don't, then that's fine. But you're not going to be charismatic in that particular relationship or engagement. And that's okay. You just have to be aware that that's how that works. If you don't care about the other person, in that moment, you are not going to be charismatic. And if you try to fake it, it might work. You might get through, but eventually it's going to fall apart. So I highly recommend that you just focus on the people and the things you actually care about helping or being a part of their lives or whatever it is that means for you. Just focus on that. The fourth step is to share yourself. So people open up to others when others open up to them. You have to create the safe space. We often mirror each other because it's just sort of a general tool of social dynamics. And this is one of the things that Charisma on Command tackles in their breakdowns of charisma. But if we open the door for, if we as leaders, as people trying to be more charismatic, open the door for others to feel safe, for others to come to us with their problems and with their experiences and their stories and whatever it is. If we open the door and lead by example, more people will do it because they know they can. People want to share. Again, we all care about ourselves. We want to share with others, but there is a social rule that says we don't unless the other person is sort of open to that. And so if we can communicate to the other person, hey, we're open, then they will be willing to do that. And how do you do that? Well, it's by sharing your own stuff, breaking the social code and saying, you know what, I'm going to push this just a little bit. I'm going to create that safe space and be mindful of the other person, of course. If they don't want that, then don't. But if you push it just a little bit, just to test the reaction, just to see, are they interested or not? That can help you to get them to open up to you. And all of a sudden, you're connecting with them, you're influencing them, you're caring about them, and you are charismatic in that moment. And then finally, number 5, this one is kind of simple, but just smile more, honestly. Like it's not always easy to do in life. Sometimes life punches us in the throat, but if we can smile more often, it communicates to the other person that we are open, that they can approach us, that they can talk to us, that they can connect with us. It gives them the room to be safe. Now, I want you to notice a trend here. So many of these tips are about making the other person feel safe. Why is that? Well, to answer that, we go back to number 2 and number 3. It's about thinking about the other person and caring about the other person. Creating a space of safety for the other person is the number one way to connect with them, to get them to connect with you, and to be charismatic. That's what I got good at with musical theater, with singing, with performing, with putting myself out there every chance I could. It helped me realize my own fears and my own anxieties and my own stress around being open. And then that helped me realize, oh, everyone else feels that way too. And so that helped me to focus more on just creating a safe space for people. And that, my friends, is the secret, in my opinion, the secret to becoming more charismatic. So I hope that this was helpful. If it was, be sure to click subscribe wherever you are consuming this, whether it's over on YouTube or on audio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening or watching. Be sure to click subscribe. If you loved this and you feel like, you know what, I really want to support this guy, I want to help him build this out and build something even bigger, head over to patreon.com/tinyleaps. That's patreon.com/tinyleaps. You can support at any level, $1 a month, $5 a month, $15 a month. If you're at 5 or more per month, there are some rewards and perks attached to that. So if you feel like you want to support the show, patreon.com/tinyleaps. And with that said, I've been Greg Clunis. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember that all big changes come from the tiny leaps you take every day.